So good morning, Beth Slate here from RJH Consulting, and I have guest Rick Geller with us. He's with Medical Capital Solutions, and we're going to talk today a little bit about what Medical Capital Solutions does and how they can help you, our clients. And those of you who are not yet our clients, we want to kind of give you a little bit of a opening a view into how Rick's company can help your law firm. So first, let me tell you a little bit about Rick. He graduated from St. John's University in 1995. We were just talking, I think, Rick, you're from the New Jersey area, you said?
Yeah, New York, New Jersey.
New York, New Jersey. I can hear it. You said you moved away at 15, but you brought it with you, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you have 25 years of personal injury, over 200 trials. You've handled thousands of individual cases from inception through trial. And you mentioned you would love to be a teacher, that you like teaching, that you have taught trial. So you are you have been boots on the ground. You have the experience. You are not an outside person trying to tell lawyers what to do. You've been that lawyer.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So it looks like in 2012, you founded Fast Track Legal Funding, which was a boutique plaintiff funding company, and reviewed over 20,000 cases, working with dozens of firms on creating additional value. So you also look like tell me about you owned a surgical center? How did that fit in?
Well, part of, personal injury in New York was understanding the medicals. And as I got better and better and started becoming closer with a lot of the surgeons, there was an opportunity to own a surgery center. Of course, my clients could not go there. That would certainly be improper, but I was able to invest in one along with another group of lawyers. So we were able to aggregate a lot of the law firms that came in. We knew what they needed. So we were able to deliver that in a surgery center because I know what I needed. So people that came to us were comfortable that a personal injury lawyer was actually the administrator of the firm.
Right. Well, and I got to tell you that at RJH Consulting, we're really picky about who we refer our clients to. We want to know that the people know, like our vendors know what they're doing. They are going to add value to the company, that it's going to be something that enhances their business, and also that the value system is aligned, that there's integrity, and that when you say, we can do this for you, that's what it means. And so the fact that we're talking today, I can tell my clients that you are absolutely the real deal. And I think especially as COVID, and here we are in July of 2020, has an impact on so many new arenas. When we look at health issues that are happening right now, and some of the lawsuits and some of the litigation that's going to come out of this, for everything from that to disability to, you name it, we're going to see a whole new niche of claims that are going to come up that the legal industry is going to have to deal with. And I think you and I just mentioned off camera earlier that there are some changes happening in that. And so, you are working to stay ahead of that. But before we get into those details, if you could, kind of give me the elevator speech. If I'm going to introduce you to my clients, tell me, what does Medical Capital Solutions do?
We're a company that provides pre-settlement funding to the plaintiffs, surgical funding through the plaintiffs themselves, because many of the doctors they don't want to take a full lien, so we'll fund some of it. And then we do some doctor funding that isn't necessarily related to the plaintiffs. Our advantage at Medical Capital Solutions is that I sat behind the desk of every one of the attorneys that your clients, that the client goes to, and I'm able to provide what is a necessary evil in the business. No attorney loves pre-settlement funding. I try to make it fast, inexpensive, efficient, but in the same sense, the real value added I bring, because there are other funding companies, is that I don't outsource my stuff to third parties, to younger attorneys. So when I get on the phone and I'm discussing your case, I'm also acting as a bit of an expert on the trial. So when you say, hey, Rick, I need $30,000 from Mr. Smith, I'm going through your case with you. Most attorneys have told me that is an excellent opportunity for them to review their own case And because I've done so many trials, often I'm going to say, well, how are you getting that into evidence? Why don't you try a day in the life video? Why? So I'm making suggestions that are helping their case and also at the same time protecting my investment. So it's a twofold responsibility. I'm also giving you capital, making your clients happy, making sure I keep the funding low so as not to overfund a case. Now, most funding companies don't get that, but when I used to practice, I used to hate it myself when people would just throw money because then it's hard to pay it back. But at the same time, I'm an advocate for you because I'm going through a trial with you.
So what's the advantage of doing funding, pre-settlement funding?
So the law firm, the only advantage is that it makes their clients happy. Otherwise, when I was practicing for my 20 years, and I used to hate the funding because you have to fill out the contracts. It's just not an easy process. So the advantage of funding is your clients need the money. So if a client's case is worth, say, $100,000, and that client needs a couple of $1,000s to get going, cover expenses, maybe a daughter or a son needs money for X, Y, and Z, I'm able to come in same day, which typically if I get full documents within a few hours, get them their funding. Their lawyer's a hero because they were able to arrange for the capital, and lawyers comfortable knowing I'm giving them the bare minimums to make their ability to settle that case even easier when the time comes.
Gallup did a poll in, I think, 2018 or 2019 that said the client/customer experience is the number one factor in how a client chooses who to work with in a business relationship. And, I think legally and in our industry, we haven't had a lot of focus on the client experience, and we're starting to do that now. And when you talk about it makes your clients happy, that is an exact reflection then on the lawyer. Even if it's you providing funding, the fact that you're in this bind, you need to have some dollars, and for whatever that purpose is, and your lawyer comes through with same day or immediate access to funds based on this outcome. Wow. That's huge. I would expect my clients to use this type of situation to get video testimonials or written testimonials from their clients about what a difference that made. So providing funding, while that helps the client, what I'm seeing is the benefit to my clients is happier clients of my law firms, material to use for marketing, and in general, just kind of takes the stress level down of everybody to get to a better resolution at the end. So talk to me a little bit about plaintiff funding. So I know that you think of this as sort of a necessary evil. Why do you call it that?
Because if you're a lawyer, I'm just going to give you a hypothetical. It's the best way. So client's case is going to settle for $30,000, and the client's going to get net of cost approximately $20,000 on a 1/3 retainer. If I fund them $5,000, which would be way too high, in 2 years, now that's $10,000 repayment. So now you're going to go to a client, hey, I just nailed it. I got you $30,000, but the client's losing half their money. So lawyers then have to negotiate value. In addition to what the injuries give you, you have to now factor in what the repayment is. So most funds are run by money guys. My fund is run by a trial lawyer. So what I typically do is I'll say, if I think the case is worth 30, I'm actually in my mind going to reduce it by about 25%. I'm going to say, all right, that case I'm putting at 20 to 24, and then I'm funding 10% off of a much lower number. So my repayment will never, I hope, will never impact the ability to resolve the case, because I've sat in that chair. That's really frustrating. And also most clients, if they know the law firm has a go-to fund, instead of submitting to 9 different funding companies, we have to fill out 9 applications and have your send out 9 packets of info. They can say, look, we work with 1 or 2 guys, and we push Rick Geller out. This is what I need. I'm getting it quickly. And I make that process for the lawyer even easier. And to your point earlier, the number one reason people switch attorneys is they don't have a good experience because the attorney doesn't speak to them. But when I speak to the clients, I'm making sure I make the attorney look good. Again, I sat on that side for 20 years. My job is to enhance your value, whatever I can do to do that. And if it's sometimes helping with a case, send me the transcript, let me read it, and I'll do it for you. It doesn't cost you anything, but I'm a good set of eyes.
That's great. Yeah. Anything, in my opinion, as a consultant that can build a relationship between attorney and client, I'm for that. Right. And especially when you come into a law firm, there is something that feels so fulfilling, and it reduces fear levels when you know you have an army at your back. And it's not just the law firm, it's you as a medical funder, it's all of the doctor who is looking after you. You are not, just you against the world trying to find a way to, deal with whatever pain issues that you're having, not just physically, but just emotionally, physically, monetarily, all of that. So I love that piece. You talked about a letter with the client offering attorney protection. Give me more about that.
A letter offering the client attorney protection? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So there's a note here about letter with clients offering attorney protection. Are you basically, how do you contact a client of an attorney? Do they contact you?
Yeah, we can't directly solicit. So what happened in those situations? Client Steve Smith calls his attorney and says, "Hey, how's my case going? I could use a little capital." Most attorneys start with saying, "Hey, listen, we don't advocate that. We're not pushing that, but ultimately you just have to do it." The attorney will contact me. They'll fill out an intake form. They'll send me the appropriate documents to back up the value of the case. I will do that pretty quickly. I have a team that'll help me review some of the background work. And then what will happen is, the letter. Yes, now I know what you mean. So a lot of times at the end of the case, once I've approved it, I give the same client on that let's use the same example, $30,000 case. I gave the client $5,000. 2 years later, it's $10,000 to repay. Now the client says, "Hey, attorney, I don't want to pay that back. Why'd you let me take out the loan?" Because that's what happens. Clients forget 2 years ago they were desperate, and 2 years later they're thinking, "I don't want to have to pay that back." So what we did when I ran my firm, and then I did at my prior fund, was I'd have the attorney draft a letter, which I of course have done, and have the client sign it, essentially stating, "I, the client, have taken this advance out. I, the client, understand that this is the interest rate. I, the client, understand that in 2 years this money is going to double, and I'm not challenging my attorney on the basis of that contract when the time ultimately is to settle my case." And the client signs it, and you sign it, and it's not essentially a court document, but it's effective at saying, "Mr. Client, I know you're upset you have to pay back $10,000, but I went through this. I told you not to do it. These are the terms. I even went through them slowly with you. You can't come back now and say, 'I don't like you, Mr. Attorney or Mrs. Attorney, because I have to pay this back.'" And it's just one of those, it just protects you and allows you to outline that to your client slowly. And they can't disagree if they've initialed every line that they read it and understood it. It's really important.
All that really does, in my opinion, is come back to creating expectations for your client.
100%.
So whether I'm in teaching my clients about consultation, from marketing to a client, to the intake, to the consultation, to the actual service part of their case, it is about setting that expectation. So if you start this process with them signing off on, "Yeah, I really need this money, and I know that this comes at a cost, and I know that this is a service you're doing for me, and isn't always my best choice, but sort of where we're at, my expectation is XYZ." And I think that honestly is going to get rid of 90% of any problems down the road, because again, you're communicating and you're being real, right? I think that's where that necessary evil comes in that, okay, look, we don't want to do this, but sometimes we have to. Right. And so recognize that there's some future costs to this, but we're going to be there for you, and we're going to make this happen. And so I think that's great. That's a huge piece for me in that client experience. Um, so in trial prep, talk to me more about funding and how that is related to trial prep.
Well, in the trial context, so there are a lot of times a doctor's going to say, hey, you need a meniscectomy, I need a 3-level fusion, and I don't want to, listen, I'm not going to do the surgery. The client has to come up with capital just to take a portion of that. So if it's a $70,000 funding, and we go to the surgeon or the attorney, one of your clients goes to the surgeon and says, hey, I need you to take a lien, but what's really your cost? Your cost for maybe the hardware, the cost for the surgery center, anesthesiology, whatever it is, it's $30,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fund that $30,000. So I am now, my capital is now allowing that client to get surgery, which of course is now adding value. And it's not something that, because you don't want to own that receivable. You want the doctor to be able to testify, hey, this client, I'm still owed $40,000 on this, or I'm owed 70 because the client has to pay back the money. And it's important that doctor be able to say that at trial. And then of course, if things go a little bad, because they do, you need to have a funding partner that's going to understand. In most funding companies, because they're not lawyers, they're saying, hey, look, I'm not saving any money on this, pay me back, but you got to give a fiduciary responsibility to your client. But I get it, because I've had cases that have gone bad. And sometimes you have to be able to speak to someone that speaks your language. And I feel like I do. And I'm able to really help them, because it doesn't always go as well as you want it to. It's just the nature of, if you're going to try cases, it doesn't always go as well as you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm. So when do you think a law firm or a client of a law firm should consider doing funding?
It's a personal thing. You don't want to do it unless you don't have to, because why give up valuable, portion of your settlement? But I think as the case goes on, especially if a client's out of work, so that certainly can help them. Instead of giving someone $20,000, I could give them $2,500 a month for 8 months. I can give them $1,000 a month for 2 years. So there's always a little cash coming in while the case is going, because as attorneys, we know if the client's out of work, it adds value. But we don't want a client to suffer and not be able to pay their bills. So that's where we step in. And also it's a service to say, hey, if you have real value in your case and you have a problem, the water heater blows, your car goes, and where am I going to come up with this $2,000 or $3,000? Hey, I've got a solution for you. I've got someone you could call, and they're going to be able to help you. So there's not a particular time, but there's a particular reason that someone needs it. And then some people just do it for the sake of doing it, but I prefer to fund on need, not just to get it. I know the outcome of it, and the clients appreciate it more as an attorney if you're responding to need. Because again, we said before, part of being a good attorney is staying on top of your clients. And I used to call my clients, every client in the firm, every quarter, and I would know their needs. And when they would call me and say, oh, Rick, thank you, you got me funding for my water heater, it says a lot that the attorney's interested in helping. It sends a good message to the client, and not just with this client, but future referrals. That's an attorney, not only did well in my case, but when my water heater blew, boy, he went right to them, got me funding, and boy, I really appreciated that. It goes to the client, just managing your clients.
We're seeing a whole new economy and a whole new standard open up during COVID. I mean, here we are, July 15th, 2020. California just shut down again yesterday. And I imagine there's a lot of other states that are going to be following that, regardless of the political side of it. In the medical and the legal fields, we're seeing some really huge changes and effects. For example, I'm in Vancouver, Washington. The courts were shut down for months. They weren't even doing trials. And at this point, they're doing some hearings and some trials, but they're doing them by Zoom. And so I look at the unemployment, not being able to work, being injured, or whatever that is, and not having income, maybe not even being able to get into surgery. There's so many things that are creating this perfect storm. I can't imagine a better time for you to be offering this service to law firms and those that are trying to help people sort of trek through this nightmare of a system right now. So there's a lot of upheaval. So talk to me a little bit about how funding might help them through some of those unknowns.
If I was still practicing today, I would, at this point, have called every client in the office to see how they were doing, just to say, how are things going? And
Right.
because that issue, like I said, I did it every quarter of my life. And I would call them, and I would say half of your clients, they knew they could get 1,000 or 2,000 just to help them get by, pay off a credit card, whatever it was. I think the gesture of calling them and then being able to respond to them, and also by calling them, you're managing their expectations. Hey, I told you the case should be done by December. Courts are closed. I don't want to settle it short. I'm a trial lawyer. I want to maximize your value. You can also manage their expectations. And I think the attorney that reaches out now gives themselves a good foothold, not only for that client, but that client's family, because they're going to say, hey, Mr. Geller gave me a call to check on me during this. What a good guy. And they're going to tell you whatever they're going to tell you. But if it comes to money, you can say, don't worry. I've reviewed your case. It's worth $17,000. You're going to get $10,000 in a year. If you want to go take $1,000 out to help you, no problem. I've got it covered. That's why you're always calling your clients, because they always want to hear. That is the number one complaint in the country of why people don't like their lawyers is no one reaches out. Every one of your clients should reach out right now,
Right.
even if they don't need funding, just to check in and say, hey, Mr. Client, how you doing?
You know, I will tell you that, again, I am the biggest champion for the client experience. And my clients talk to my lawyers, those clients in law firms, their teams reach out at least twice a month. And not always the attorney, but somebody from that law firm is checking in with them, even if there's nothing to report, because it's about relationship building. And if our health crisis right now with COVID is teaching us anything, it's this that matters. It's that relationship. And if I think that you, Rick Geller, are concerned about me being able to pay my bills, get the health care that I need, and you're willing to step up and do that, that's huge. And I think it's, you know, obviously it's a business. There's a profit to that, for you involved in that, but the service.
I think you froze. Beth, you still there? Wait, are you back? You are frozen on my screen. There you are.
There, that was weird. I got lost there, so I'm sure we'll cut that piece out. But where did I lose you?
You were just talking about, following up with your clients and obviously make, how much they appreciate you reaching out. I was going to add in that I used to bring 1,000 cases a year. I never marketed. I never did any of that stuff. You know how I did it? I marketed my clients. I call them every quarter. Their friends, their families. I thought every client was a multiple of 10. They knew 10 people. So I would bring in more business and at night I'd pour myself a scotch, and from 8 to 10, almost every night of the week, I would call clients and just say, and I take little notes on it. Hey, how you? Oh, your kid's in a softball game. I would call 2 weeks later, like, how you doing? It was the best way to get business and didn't cost me anything.
You know, it's funny. I learned marketing a bit ago, but one of the things that I have never forgotten, and this was way before most people understood what the client experience was, is the number one car salesman in the US was somewhere in like Iowa or Nebraska, Wyoming, something like that. And his thing was he got birth dates, marriage celebrations, birth of a child, whatever it was. And he just kept in contact with those people. And you're right. That piece of, I am going to take care of you as the client in every way that I can, and I'm going to show you that you matter to me. That is where you develop not only the loyalty of your client, but the recommendation that doesn't cost you anything except a few minutes. And so I love that you understand that. And I think this particular service that you offer is actually just another reason to pick up the phone and talk to your clients about it. So are there any tools that the client would need, client as in the client of the law firm, to be able to project their need? Like what do they need? How do they know how much to ask for, I guess is my question.
Most clients will say, give me the maximum value, which is assessed by me, because they don't realize at the moment the repercussions of interest. It's not something that it's foreign to many people what interest really means, especially compounding interest. So typically they'll ask the attorney. Now, if the attorney trusts the funder, which rarely happens, but if they trust me, which they should, the client could ask me for $50,000. I'm doing my assessment on the value, and then I'm reducing my assessment just to hedge my bet, and then only taking 10% of that. So even if they ask me, I'd rather someone take $2,000 instead of $5,000 and come back to me in 6 months if they need it. But their number is, they're going to ask their attorneys, hey, Attorney Smith, what's my case worth? And if you're an attorney, you're always going low. I don't know yet. We haven't assessed it. But the difference is I'll know. I'm going to know pretty quickly what the value is. I'm going to look at the policy limits. I'm going to look at the property damage. I'm going to look at the treatment records. I'm going to be within a couple of $1,000s of the ultimate value of that case across the board, because I'm actually, when I review it, I'm just thinking what I would get, and then I'm adjusting for venue. The numbers in New York were different than Florida. The numbers in Florida are different than Texas. And the numbers in Texas are different than Nevada. And so and the bottom line is I'm still trying to go as low as I can, because I don't want to interfere with the lawyer. And the last call, the lawyer saying, Rick, you gave this guy $5,000, the case is only going to go for 12. Well, I just screwed up. And I don't want to do that. And I'll know if that case is a $10,000 case. I may give the client $500, just enough to keep them happy. But I also want to know that the lawyer can pay me back, because ultimately I'm helping the client. But if I screw the lawyer, it all goes bad. So I need to understand what it's going to sound like to the lawyer 2 years when the case settles. And because I've done it for so many years and had to handle this on the other end, I don't want that call from the lawyer, Rick, why? And it's never happened in all the years I've done this, because I pretty much understand the lawyer doesn't want the funding, but he wants to keep the client at a minimum. I get that. And that's why my relationship with my lawyers, even when I left my prior fund and started a new one, I've got the same relationships with the same lawyers now, because they knew me. And I wasn't just a number. There's a lot of funding companies, but how many guys get this granular and get this personal? Because I'm the only fund, I think, in the United States that is actually not just managed by, but owned and run by someone with, as much trial experience as I have. It just doesn't happen.
Which I think is invaluable, because, you have that background of saying, I'm not going to put you underwater because I've been on your side of the desk, and I want this to be a positive as opposed to a restrictor. So I think that's great on both sides. It's a win-win-win for all of you, which finding those solutions that win for the client, win for the lawyers, and win for you, I don't think there is better than that. I happen to have a client firm that handles disability and ERISA claims, and they deal with surgeries and health things and all of the arena that you are in. I assume their clients would benefit also, not just a personal injury or mass tort firm.
Well, the mass tort firms we do a lot for. In fact, that's what I cut my teeth on, was the mass tort. But look, any client that's got a personal injury case, or any doctor really playing in the personal injury space, is a potential client for me. And it's the same analysis, the doctor versus the lawyer. I'm doing a case-by-case analysis to fund the doctor. It's the same. Personal injury vetting is the same thing as letter of protection vetting for the doctor. You just have to analyze the case and see what it's worth, and be an advocate for both parties. I mean, the doctors less, the lawyers. I can give my favorite funding lawyer story. I read a guy, he wanted $50,000. And so he sent me the medical records, and I called him back. I said, I can't fund it. He said, why? I said, well, I read your operative report. I said, who wrote that? He said, what do you mean? The surgeon wrote it. I said, no, his secretary wrote that. He signed it because he missed clinical correlation. And if you do not have clinical correlation, if you do not correlate how the accident occurred, the mechanism of the injury, and the medical records with the need for surgery, if you do not tie that together, which is called clinical correlation, you're losing a trial. And he said, you read it that granularly to get that? I said, for that kind of money, I need to know that you can win at trial. So I pretended I was trying the case. I said, you need to go back to the doctor and amend this report, which you'd already exchanged. And then I funded him. And I caught that because,
Wow, I love that.
and that's, and most lawyers even around the country, I mean, us New York lawyers, I mean, it's, it's a war zone. So you really got to know what you're doing. So I'm reading stuff to make sure if they've missed something, I'm going to catch it. And if they call me and say, Rick, I've got this tough case, let's go through it. Show me what you have. How you getting this into evidence?
Wow. I look at that and I think I appreciate that there are medical funding companies out there, but the fact that you've been a trial lawyer and you are also looking to protect my client, the law firm, and can help them achieve a better win, I think that sets you apart.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So do you have a website that our clients can go take a look at?
And you can go to www.medcapsol, which is medcapsol.com, and you'll see it divided into medical funding and pre-settlement funding. We actually may add in a bit of a COVID answer because a lot of lawyers are saying, well, I was suing on this. Well, it's, there are a lot of issues right now. And I mean, you haven't asked me about that, but in New York, a lot of people want to sue for the nursing homes because of what Governor Cuomo did. And I'm not passing judgment. This is not a political discussion. However, he's already said that the owners of the nursing homes cannot be held responsible for his decisions. And he's got a little blood on his hands there, potentially. So before you start suing for COVID, you really need to know who's going to be liable. And I think most municipalities are going to absolve the tortfeasor of liability since no one really understands this. It's a big issue how to practice now with COVID. You have a client, it's a great case, that client can get sick. In fact, I had a guy that funded a case a year ago, $150,000 surgery he paid for. Guy died of COVID. It's very sad that that case is over.
Yeah.
And so you have to give some considerations as to where you are, especially in a small practice or even a large practice. You're not bringing as much business now. And the business you bring in, people sick, you have to kind of do a good intake now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're signing, at least I would really dig in a little deeper when I'm signing up a case. Who do you live with? I'm not asking anything bad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I live with, is anyone sick in that house? I would never have asked that 10 years ago.
Right.
I'm just saying it's an important question. And how do you get treatment? And especially if I'm a lawyer and I'm saying, hey, I'm doing home PT now. Can you prove it? Can you record it? Are you recording it? Is your spouse or significant other saying, oh, yes, Mr. Steve is doing this home PT? These are things that we see every day now with COVID. And that if you're an attorney, that's the other reason you better call. Because if they're doing home PT, you can't say, well, I took 6 months off of therapy. Either you're going in with a mask 2 at a time in an office, or you're doing the exercises at home, and someone better be able to testify to that. And so you better memorialize that and have someone there saying, if they need to, hey, Beth was doing her therapy 3 times a week, extension, flexion, rotation, whatever it was. These are the things that lawyers today are forgetting. And you have to do it, because how do you go to a jury in a year and they're going to say, oh, your client didn't treat during COVID? You have to treat.
That I love the input there. I think that what you're talking about is really keeping an eye toward the end zone. And what that tells me about you, Rick, is that there's integrity in your process. You really are looking for that win for the attorney and for the client. And you don't want to put them into a situation that's just going to bury them and put them underwater. If you see things, you're going to call them out and say, hey, let's clean up this area so that you can be assured of a better settlement, right, in the end. And that when we go into trial, there aren't any big surprises there. So again, sets you apart. I want that for my clients. I want to know that if they're going to do this kind of funding, because honestly, we're looking at we're looking everywhere for help as an economy right now. And I think your service is going to become even more essential with all of the unemployment and the health issues and the new laws that are coming out and the new, the new things that are blocking what we can and can't do. if there are surgeries that need to happen so you can go back to work, but you can't get the surgery because it's not a life-threatening ordeal, they may need to have some funding. So I'm glad to hear that not only that you have the legal background, but you're staying on top of the COVID stuff too, because that is 2020's word, pivot. And we need to be able to adjust and move quickly to be able to help our clients. And I think there's even a marketing message there that can be crafted for my clients about, hey, in this time when people are on unemployment and they're struggling to get healthcare, we have ways to help you.
Agreed. Let's go back to what we started with. All these things need to be addressed in that phone call. It's not
right?
just, it's are you treating? How are you feeling? How are you documenting what you're doing? Did you go refill your muscle relaxant prescription? That's evidence. What have you done to help your case? The clients don't know what they need to do. You, the lawyer, you should know what to tell them. And that's why even if you have to call your client every week, did you do your therapy? Yes. Were you doing your home therapy? Yes. What'd you do? I just did some therapy. That's not a good answer. Send them an email. These are the exercises for herniated disc in your cervical spine. Head, right, left, back, whatever it is. Are you putting Bengay or Icy Hot or whatever it is? Because you're going to need the evidence.
Right.
And you can't, and if you have to track them every week, your active cases, you track them every week, but you need, and have them do telemedicine so they can at least tell the doctor, my neck is killing me, the radiculopathy, my fingers are numb and tingling. You better get them on a telemedicine thing and work out with the doctor for 5 minutes so the doctor can take a note. Otherwise, you have no evidence. And for every personal injury firm, they should know them saying, after 6 months, I was in a lot of pain. That means nothing. No, but medicine is a great option.
There's a lot of firms out there, personal injury specifically, but even more than that, who has an entire team that manages that case. So many of our clients have paralegals and legal assistants who will have that day-to-day contact with the clients to move that case forward. And then the attorney checks in on a regular basis. But I'm thinking that having you come in and do a short, training session on exactly what you're talking about right now, what do your clients need from you to ensure a better settlement and better evidence at trial? Would you be at all interested in doing a quick webinar for them on that?
Absolutely. Look, if you can't tell while I'm speaking how much I love plaintiffs and my utter disdain for the insurance companies, there isn't anything I would not do if I thought they'd get one more penny from Allstate or Geico.
Yeah, there you go. I love that. Yeah. So what we're seeing, law firm owners, is that Rick is available to do webinars, and I think RJH will probably set up a webinar that talks about what things you need to get your client communicating about to ensure a better settlement in the end and better evidence. And so it's actually an entire team process. And if that's the case, then having some medical funding in that process is a lot less riskier, because you're doing it based on, here's what we know. If we have this piece, we can get that piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would reach out to us at RJH Consulting at 509-675-4665, or you can reach Rick at medcapsol.com. What's your phone number, Rick?
I would 877-401-1440 is the office line. And then my email, if you're interested,
absolutely,
is rgeller, RGELLER at medcapsol.com. And if some attorney goes through and has a question, what do you mean by telemedicine? Because a lot of people are not doing that. Listen, I think it's most of your attorneys, that is all self-explanatory. They're not going to have to ask me a question. They're going to say,
right.
All they're going to call you and say, Beth, that's a good idea. Telemedicine every 2 weeks, every month. So I could show 12 months of, I'm still in pain, I'm still this. They told the doctor. The doctor then in their report can say, while they were out, they continued home physical therapy, they continue the following exercises and get into why they're doing them and their range of motion. Because you could probably say, if I'm a doctor and I say, Beth, turn your head to the left, tell me when the pain starts, and it's here, we were saying, all right, is it 20% reduction in range of motion? Yes, it's not with an instrument to do that, like an arthroidal protractor, which, to measure it, but I can visually see there's pain here, and it's just something. Otherwise, you have nothing to show a jury. And
as opposed to just that sort of dead silence. And I'll tell you, just here in the Northwest, it's hard to do anything other than telemedicine. And so if you have this big gap of just nothing as a client who's been injured, that works against you. So telemedicine seems to be a big part of keeping track, having a record.
I mean, attorneys also could be just getting ready for trial. I mean, I'd be going through my files. What am I missing? What evidence could I, what type of demonstrative evidence could I pick up right now? Have I gone through my transcripts? I mean, if you come out of this ready to try cases, I think you have a big advantage. If you're sitting waiting for them to open, I would be ready to go on everything. I mean, that's what I would do. I would be ready on everything.